Welcome everyone to another American TESOL Institute webinar. My name is Jason R. Levine, better known as Fluency MC. I have the great honor and privilege and pleasure of hosting these webinars, which I believe more than what anyone else is doing is providing English language teachers around the world with monthly topics that are really relevant, integral to their development as English teachers in different contexts. So whether you're a native speaker of English, a non-native speaker of English, as a teacher, whether you have just started teaching or you have a lot of experience, each month we have something different that will help you, I'm sure, in some way, maybe just a little bit, maybe a lot, whether you teach adults, children, different levels, wherever you are in the world. So thanks for coming. If you're here live and you have questions, you can put them in the chat or comments and we'll have a chat at the end. If you are watching the video, welcome as well. And if you have questions or comments, you can email me. I'll give you my email in a moment. Or if you are on YouTube, Facebook, other places where you see this recording, you can start a chat there. So the focus today is on the Cambridge IELTS exam. We've done, actually quite recently, I did a webinar with American TESOL on test prep generally, where we did talk about the IELTS, but not the specific structure and format of the test. So that's going to be part of what we do. And also tips and things you can do in the classroom to make preparation more engaging and effective for your students. So my email is here. If you want a copy of the presentation, I'm happy to send it to you, a PDF file of what you're going to see on these slides. And that's important, especially today, because I'm going to be kind of zipping through some things where there's text on the screen that will be useful for you, especially if you're getting started teaching, but we won't have time to go through it completely. So I'm happy to send it to you. Also, if you have any further questions or comments and you prefer to email me, I'm more than happy to correspond that way. So these 10 tips were from that webinar I mentioned about English proficiency test preparation generally. And I just want to go through this a little bit to show you that we are going to focus on number 1 and number 2, a little bit of number 3, number 4, 5, 6, 7, we will not do. So I encourage you to watch do a search for stress-free test prep is what I think I called it. Yeah, that's it. American TESOL. You can go find the recording, and I may, I'm sure I will allude to these areas as we go, but I'm not going to be focusing as much on this because just for lack of time, the IELTS has a lot of information to cover. So I've decided to kind of choose carefully what I do today and make sure that I'm available if you have questions after. But yes, numbers 4, 5, 6, 7, really important for the IELTS and any language proficiency test, but we won't be talking about it so much. Number 8, I want to talk about as it relates to IELTS. And 9, I'll mention, but we're not going to get into it too much. Again, you can go back and watch that one. And number 10, definitely going to talk about ChatGPT and other Gen AI, because almost on a daily basis, there's new stuff happening, especially that can help with language learning with generative AI. So as I said, if you're here live, good to see you in the chat. That's great. Keep it up. We'll talk at the end. Let's get started. This is one of those slides that I'm not going to go through, and you can just sort of look at it while I talk and look at it later if you have the PDF. But this you can find on the IELTS website. These are things that I'm going to show you the many free resources available. There's a lot that Cambridge puts out there, and also a few paid things that are worth paying for if you are serious about training students for the IELTS. We're going to focus on the academic test, not general. The academic test and general are the same for the writing and speaking tasks. Sorry, let me say that again. They are the same for the listening and speaking tasks. The writing and the reading are a bit different, but we're going to focus on the academic test today. That is far more used, more common, more popular. And if you have questions about general training, you can get in touch with me. I'm happy to talk to you about it, but it's pretty self-explanatory if you look on the Cambridge websites and other websites that are very good. Some of them are not so good. So that's another thing today, because we won't have time, obviously, to go through all the different materials that are out there for you on websites. I will be showing you websites that are very reputable and, in my experience, the best ones to consult for IELTS. So 4 sections to the test. We're going to look at each of them. But before we continue, this is the first thing I put in those 10 tips, right? Know the test inside out. When I start doing test prep with students, this is the first thing we talk about. We talk about how you can have an English score, or English proficiency, sorry, wrong word, here, but your Cambridge score is here. You could also have an English proficiency that is more like here, but your Cambridge score is here. A lot of that has to do with how well you're familiar with the test. Why is that? Well, because our brains need to do 2 things, right? They need to focus on what's happening in the test, what you need to do for the test, and the English. You can't do both unless your English is so high that you don't need to take the Cambridge. So, for example, if you gave, highly intelligent native speaker of English the Cambridge test, but didn't tell them much about it, they would not score well in certain places because they didn't know the test. So they were using their brain to figure out what was going on. If you're reading this while you're listening to me, I think you'll get the idea. I'm kind of explaining it in a different way. You can see it here as well. I think this is very obvious when you think about it, but the problem is many students don't think about it, and teachers often don't emphasize it enough. They kind of think, okay, here's the handbook, this is what the test is, and doing test practice and kind of saying, okay, well, this is one of the types of reading tasks. Well, in fact, there are so many different tasks in reading, listening to, and it can be confusing. And there are pitfalls. There are places that it's not a big deal as long as you know what to expect. And if you don't, right, you are not going to be able to focus as well. And the test will not really show a true picture of your English proficiency, because it will reflect the fact that you don't know the test well enough. So this is hugely important, and I strongly recommend starting with this. You must start with it. And one way you can, I use Bamboozle, and you can play for free a game I made called Know the IELTS Inside Out. And I talk about Bamboozle a lot because it's a really cool way to, and you can use this. Well, let me show you what I did for this test, and you can just find me. I'll show you and do a search, but you could do true or false. Reading paper, the 3 texts go from easiest to most difficult. True or false? That is true, and that's very important and that's a 10-point question. So you can play with teams. And here's a multiple choice question. And I didn't show you the next slide, but if you press show, you will see different answers, like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, right? The writing task one is 20. You should use 20 for that and 40 for task 2, and task 2 is worth double the points. So this is what I mean about knowing the test. Students should automatically know this so that they can focus, and also so they can build strategies. So if you try to build strategies on a very weak understanding of the test, right, then it's not, the strategies don't work well. So you can find this game on Bamboozle. Just search for me, or just search for the test. It's public, and you can play it, and you can make your own Bamboozle tests and find other IELTS tests on here that focus on vocabulary, on strategies, all kinds of great stuff. So what do teachers have from Cambridge itself? There's a guide, PDF. It's free. The best thing about this guide is the first two things: test format and scoring. It doesn't have much in the way of preparing students for the test. The student guide does. I'll talk about that in a moment. But this is a good time to say that we're not going to talk about scoring, again, for time reasons, and also because I don't think there's anything that I could explain that isn't explained well enough online. The test format is explained pretty well, but I do want to go through it because it can be kind of confusing, and especially if you're a new teacher, can seem kind of daunting, all the different types of tasks. So we will be talking about the format and then talk about strategies and activities. So you want to get this. That's free. It does have this. This is from they have tips from teachers, which it's a great idea. It's amassing comments teachers have about the test. However, it's pretty general stuff here. So you can look at this. We're going to get into definitely more detail than you have here on tips for how to prepare students. So yeah, you'll find more stuff online for tips for teachers that's better than this free PDF, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. The student handbook, which is called Information for Candidates, so you can, if you Google this, it's free, PDF. Definitely need this. It's also, as a teacher, it will help you if you don't know the test well. And this is a paid resource, but it's absolutely worth it. It also includes tests, I think 3 or 4 tests. This is a great book. If you teach educational testing service tests, ETS tests like TOEIC and TOEFL, there's very little material that ETS makes available. I won't go into why. I think I did it in my last webinar on test in general. It's interesting stuff, but let's just say if you're teaching Cambridge tests, you're in luck, because there's a lot of real tests from the past, sample tests that are out there with explanations, answer keys. That's not true for TOEIC and TOEFL the same way. This is a great place to start. This also has exercises for students to do in it, and you're not supposed to photocopy it, but if you pay for it, you could photocopy it, I think, and it's not that big of a deal. There are also the practice tests, free tests online. Go to IELTS, you can get free practice tests. You can also buy books of practice tests. So no shortage of practice tests. And if you remember from the tips that I mentioned before, use authentic material. This is enormously important. If you go online and it's not a real test that you found, it's something somebody created to resemble an IELTS test, and they have to be careful, because if you make a test that's too similar to the real test, then you can get in trouble for getting copyright infringement, which is an issue with the TOEIC and TOEFL. But anyway, with IELTS, this shouldn't be an issue, because there's so many practice tests out there. And again, email me if you have any problem finding practice tests for IELTS. And I strongly suggest using, people will say, oh, well, you can encourage your students to read in English, read, academic English for the IELTS, read newspapers. That's great. But if what they really need to do is a lot of practice with the content on the test. Why? Because there are very specific tasks that they need to repeat, and we're going to look at those to become more comfortable and use strategy. So it's great if they're also reading, the New York Times science section or the Financial Times, looking at charts and graphs. And I will talk about that a little bit, but I would avoid advice saying that, just get your students to do a lot of reading and listening to authentic material. Get them to do a lot of practice tests and even repeat the tests. I want to make sure I say that because a lot of people don't know that. Repeat tests, do the same tests over and over again, especially if you're low level. There's nothing wrong with that, going back and doing it. In fact, it's better to do a real test over again than to do something that's not real. Speaking of real, also test-like conditions. So answer sheets, you can get a blank answer sheet. This one is filled in to show you how it works, but you can get make tons of copies of these answer sheets. Always use them. So even if you're going to do just one section of the listening, use an answer sheet. Never don't use answer sheets, because they're so important for students to get comfortable with, and we're going to talk about some pitfalls with the answer sheet in a few moments. That's a listening, and this is a reading. I know I'm going quickly, guys who are here. If you have questions, comments, you're free to put them in the chat and we can talk about it at the end, or just try to remember, and you can ask me or email me if you are not here and there's something you didn't understand or you want me to expand on. I have to be mindful of time because there's so much coming up. Listening test has 4 parts. This is what they tell you in the student examination book. I'm going to zip over here because this is really useful. This is from that book that you have to pay for that I showed you, the student book. So I did take the liberty of making a couple scans from that book for this webinar, but this is important because the slide before tells you there are 4 sections and what happens, but this gives you a little more information. As you can see, you get 10 minutes extra to transfer answers. In the reading section, you don't. I'm going to repeat that later, but these are important things to understand. You get extra time to transfer the answers from listening. In reading, it's included. It's the same listening test, academic and general, and you hear it once only. In some Cambridge tests, you hear recordings twice. You hear it only once, and that affects our strategy. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. This is also really useful because it's not mentioned in this much detail on the website. This is again from the book I mentioned. There are 7, is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 different task types. Reading also has many task types. We will not have time today to talk about all the task types, but I will be focusing on a couple each time when we talk about strategy. So basically, it's writing something in, or it's choosing a multiple choice answer, and that's the same as the reading. These test tips are from the student examining book. I want to highlight a couple things here so you can look at this. While I've already mentioned the first one. The second one, you have time at the beginning to read through the questions. This is huge because you can take this time to really get an idea of what you're going to hear before you hear it. So it's great that they give you time. Not every test gives you time. You have to use the time for that while you listen. So you have time beforehand. And there's a great example that's given also, and you'll have time to really focus on that, which is great. Transferring to the answer sheet. So When you are listening, you can take notes, okay? And this is important. You can highlight, you can bring in colors, highlighters. Cambridge tests are particular in that way. Um, you need practice with how you take notes, because you're not going to write perfectly or have perfect spelling, and then that 10 minutes to transfer. So with practice, what happens is you might forget the S, for example, which is something they often test, but then when you're putting in the answer sheet, you're thinking about things like singular, plural, spelling, which is important. You spell something wrong, it's wrong. Right? The other thing is the word limit. Sometimes no more than one word, 2 words, 3 words. You need to check this. This is what I mean about, practicing so much with the test material, not just, listening to things elsewhere, because you need to get very, very comfortable with this format. A few things that are, widely talked about with IELTS. These are not like secrets of mine, but I want to highlight here. So you don't always, you won't always understand every word you hear, but if you're focused on the speaker's functions and attitudes, functions meaning, are they someone making a request? This applies to the conversation part of the listening. Not the academic part so much, but are they making a request, agreeing, disagreeing? Does the other person get angry and disagree? If you start to feel that, and that comes with practice, always get students to think about functions and attitude, because you can make good guesses when you know more about what the function is and the attitude is of the speaker. I already mentioned taking the time. I just want to make sure it's the number one, to use the information that you see to predict what you're going to hear. You have time for that. IELTS is all about paraphrasing. Every part of the test, you're going to hear me today talk about the word paraphrase. So similar words here, words you don't understand, it's kind of a distractor, a trick. You don't need to worry. If it's something important, they will give you easier words, or you can infer things. Don't get stuck on something you don't understand. I mentioned the spelling and the plurals. When you transfer, don't worry about that as much when you take notes. For the academic part, and this is true for everything, so let me slow down and just say, you listen to it once. So for every listening on the IELTS, you need to make sure that understanding the main idea is your goal. This is especially true for the lectures and talks. So, for example, if it's a very difficult lecture about, reproduction in fish or something, but you can get the main idea that there's a new science, a new way to study fish using some sort of AI, let's say, right? So you don't understand all the details, but you get the main idea. This will help you have a better chance on specific information. Normally, when you listen to something, you can listen again, you start to listen for specific details, but you don't have that option. How about in the classroom? What can you do? If you are, especially with new students, don't know the test, and or lower level students, do it with a completed answer sheet. I'll show you in a moment. Don't start with answer sheets that aren't completed. And same thing with the scripts. Use the scripts first. A lot of people think, oh, well, I shouldn't look at scripts because on the test, I can't look at scripts. Well, that's not the best way to think about it. The best way to think about it is if you do enough practice while you read and listen, and you can really see the language, because it's much easier for students to understand when they're reading these scripts than only listening. Then when you listen, you have a better chance of seeing the words, right? You're making a connection between what you see in the script and what you hear. So that is huge. In a moment, I'll give you an example. And then move into things with gap fill, where you're removing words from scripts, especially words that, if students have are important keywords that they might not catch because of pronunciation, stress patterns, etc. And I'm going to talk about the dictation and spoken dictation, written dictation. Spoken dictation, also called shadowing. But let's look. This is what I mean about. Did I give? Maybe I didn't. Sorry, I'm just going ahead here. I didn't show you a. That's my fault. But imagine first you had the customer's name, and you fill it in first. Right? You can either fill in yourself, or have students just get it from the answer key. This is before they start, have it already filled in. So I didn't show you that. There is the example, and then they're listening and they already see the correct answers. There's nothing they're just observing. I would move from that to then. I do have it here. Basically, you put Marshall there for number one. You put 180 days in for number two. Have them just put it in, or you put it in. And then do it. And this is a way to get introduced to listening, or again, for learners that are not so strong, or really anybody taking the test, I recommend this, right? So you already have the correct answers. Now, the next thing, and then listen, the next thing is with the script. So especially to highlight, to notice, of course, on the test, they don't have the script, but where's the important information? Oh, look here. We can offer you 3.65%. Oh, no, hang on. Sorry. This is like they're trying to highlight. We have a special deal. Oh, 3.85. So going back, right? That's 3.85. So with the script, slowing it down, having them read it, and then moving into doing it without is hugely important. I'm going quickly because I'm looking at the time. I hope you got that. Again, if you have questions, you can ask me. The other thing is shadowing, which is you listen to something, but this is after you've done it. So imagine you did that test practice, and then you play and repeat with the script. Again, we call it immersive reading, listening and reading, and in this case, also speaking. All of that really combines to improve listening skills. If you want to, and you have more time, and this is your out of class activities, you can demonstrate them in the classroom. This one takes longer, but really improves listening skills and reading skills and writing skills. Is you stop, you listen, you stop, you write. You listen again, you write. The repetition is major in helping you improve listening skills this way, especially getting used to the accents, and there are many different ones on the test. That's listening. Moving on to reading. So the reading is different, the academic from the general. I'm going to look at examples of things from academic today. There are 3 texts, so you have 60 minutes. How do you divide your time between the texts? That's very important. This is from the book that I scanned. Gives you more detailed information about the different tasks you may be given. This is from the student book, the free book. I just want to highlight, these are tips for reading. It's not extensive, these tips. Again, you don't have extra time for the answer sheet, so we're going to talk about timing in a moment. So this is what I want to add about timing first. So you hear people say, oh, well, it's 60 minutes, so 20 minutes for each text. But you may remember from earlier that the texts get more difficult. So practicing them separately is something that's really good, like a bunch of the easier ones first, not doing all 3. seeing if you can get the first one down to, 12 minutes, I think is possible. Even 10 minutes is possible. Maybe 15 for the next one. You're up to 25, right? And then that means you have 35 minutes for the last one. Now that may be too much, but if you have 30 minutes for the last one, I'm forgetting the transfer. But anyway, I think you get what I mean. You're not doing 20 minutes for each text. That doesn't make sense because it gets more difficult. Also, as I said, we're not going to talk about the different task types, but students, if they do enough practice, will know, oh, I hate the, matching the headings. That takes me a long time, or, oh, that one's easier for me than the more traditional reading comprehension questions. So you start to recognize with practice which ones will take longer, which ones you can do in less time. I would say 3 minutes to transfer answers. I hear some people say 3 to 5, 3 or 4. I wouldn't do more than 3, but with practice, you can get it to 3. Some people say go right to the questions. Definitely, you don't want you can't, and you don't want to read something carefully, but you need to skim it. Make sure you get the main idea before you start looking at the questions. You can get trapped by distractors if you don't do it. Each question has the same value. So if a question is difficult, and on this test in reading, difficult means time. There's not much of a difference between difficult is because of time. If you have more time, almost every student, unless their level is very low, would be able to answer the question. They would just need more time. So if you start that feeling of, wait a second, I'm taking too much time, forget it, because another question will be easier for you, meaning it'll take less time, and they have the same value. Lots of stuff. I put this in here because I knew this would happen with time. Lots of great activities by Alex Case. He does really good stuff, not just for reading. English Club is great for IELTS stuff. So if you want more ideas for classroom activities for reading, go here. I was about to explain an activity I did with reading it's a cool activity, but something he also does with cutting up parts of the test. Anyway, it would take too long for me to explain it, and what's the point when you can go here and get it and get a lot more? So Google English Club Alex Case IELTS reading. I do want to show you something that I do, which is having students highlight, and on the test they can highlight too, right? Getting good at, this is a student who's really gotten good at it, getting good at highlighting where the answer is in the text so that they can do the task more easily. But if you look here, right, number 1 is water table well is the answer. Natural spring, you can see they are in order. So you can also do this yourself. This one I did, or this one might be from a test actually that I used. Anyway, the point is, so they can see, just like we saw in the listening, get some help before they do this on their own, especially because readings like this with diagrams, they just repeat the same thing over and over again, just with different diagrams. So highlighting text is a great thing to do in the classroom. Moving to writing. Here's our long thing again, which I'm just going to say is in the student book. When I say student book, excuse me, the student, it's not the examining handbook, that's TOEIC. Anyway, I said at the beginning, it's the free thing at the beginning they can get. And here's an example of a writing task. The first one always has some kind of chart or graph. And the second one, if we want to go back, the second one here is task 2. It's more of an essay when you are giving your opinion using your higher order thinking skills. But the first one is recommended 20 minutes. Second one is double. And it has, and do not use your opinion. That is one of the pitfalls here. You are just reporting and using comparison language. Lots of great stuff on the internet. I'll show you to plan this. One thing you can do, I did say, you mentioned earlier, you could use outside materials. There's so much stuff on the Cambridge does, you don't need to, but you can find things like this. If you look in the Financial Times down here, you'll see a graph. I have it here. You can't really see it, read it very well, but the point is, every day the Financial Times has this, and that is similar to task 1. So you could cut, find those online, cut them up to give students practice with real life materials. The second task tends to be much more difficult, 250 words at least. Good news, Gen AI, which I'll show you in a moment, can really make this a much easier process. Both tasks, but I think especially task 2. Task 1, I think with enough examples, they can get good at it, but task 2, Gen AI can really help them build their writing skills. So we're going to look at that. Here we go. So this is ChatGPT. You can use any Gen AI that's worthy. But basically you can use it, one, to get an example. So here's an example prompt, and I just put it here for you to see an example. Now you can also find examples on the internet. That's true. But the thing about ChatGPT is you can keep going. I mean, that's the most important thing. Not that it can just generate something, but then you can chat with it to ask it questions about what it generated, to ask for another topic really quickly, to compare what ChatGPT does. You can ask ChatGPT, what is most important. What's the most important connecting language you're using here? What do you suggest I do? And then, of course, you can put in your own essays and get correction. So students can do this, and this is a great use of ChatGPT. Test prep, ChatGPT and Gen AI for test prep is, when people say, "Oh, it's Gen AI is not good for education," blah blah blah. It depends how you use it. And for test prep, any way you use it is useful and not cheating using Gen AI, because you're taking the test in real time. So if you're done a lot with Gen AI to repeat certain things, to memorize certain things for writing, great if it comes out when you're taking a test, just like it can come out when you're at a job and you need to write something or speak. Talk about speaking in a moment, and that's very, very similar what Gen AI can do to help you prepare for speaking. It's the repetition. So anyways, this is an example of an essay about TikTok. But here's the really cool thing. Here's the correction of it. And I asked, or a student asked, or I think this was me, can you explain the changes that you made? So if you're a teacher and you don't realize that Gen AI can do this, think about the time saved and how much more students can do with getting essays with correction, and not just correction. This one, I did not prompt it very much with IELTS. So if you, and this was a long time ago, actually, like a year ago. Now, if you put in things like, why did you make them, and give me suggestions for IELTS, which errors are more important for IELTS, it really knows the test very, very well. I actually, gave it a prompt today after I did my presentation to actually towards the end to see, give me a presentation on IELTS to see what it would do, and it was so much better, than before. I mean, just the information it knows about the test. So, as with many things today, with the resources out there, it's great that you're here with me. But probably the best thing I can do is make you feel like, okay, I can do this, or I've got this, just like this website. This is IELTS.idp, which is one of the good ones. And you just go out there and there's so many resources. It's just easier and easier to help students prepare for this test. So this is, I found this is great for writing. This website is good in general for all parts of the test. If you don't know TEFL-tastic, it's great for anything to do with business English. This is Alex Case again, who's just my hero. This is his site. I mentioned him earlier. Anything with IELTS, when you see Alex Case, definitely you want to check that out. Let's go to speaking because we don't have too much time. I'm going to make this happen in an hour. I usually try to do the chat with you guys within the hour. I will stay after if you have questions and comments. That leaves me just about 10 minutes here to talk about IELTS speaking. So there are these three parts to the test. I'm just going to whiz through it. I'll just talk about it a little bit while you look at this. It's with an examiner, so it's not like ETS where you speak into a computer. You're actually with a person. This is such a cool thing, especially these days when everything is so automated. I don't know if they'll keep this forever, but hopefully they will, or it'll be like a AI generated person, or I don't know. Here are the more details. Again, this the scan from that book you have to pay for students, but it gives you more specific information on the three tasks. Really important to make templates. Template meaning like, basically, for the essays too, like, introducing yourself, your hobbies, this kind of thing, or, in my opinion, but not to memorize answers, but to try to practice the same language each time, and especially practice pausing and phrases. Two reasons. One is that there's no way you can answer right away. You need time to think. Everybody does. You need that in your first language. So if you're doing it in a second language, even more. The second reason is that it looks good if you use phrases like, let me see, that's an interesting question. Just need to think for a moment, right? This is different from while you're speaking. That's not recommended. What's recommended, right, is that you use phrases to give yourself time to think, and you will get points for that. There are so many real speaking tests with real Cambridge examiners on YouTube. So the best thing I just show my students the real test before I have them read anything. Why not? Then when they read about the speaking paper, it's funny to call it a paper. That's very UK, speaking test or whatever, but especially speaking paper, but I guess they still call it a paper. Then it's easier for them to remember what to do if they've just seen it. And once they've seen it, they can practice with friends. That could be fun to do. One person is the examiner. Two people are taking the test. But then Gen AI, just this week, or is it last week, ChatGPT 5 came out. 5 has really, really much better language help with role playing, going back and forth. It's I saw examples of it, just a few, but it's amazing. So you tell Gen AI, I didn't even put, I had some old thing. Yeah, I had some old thing that I did with ChatGPT, but it's so much better now. If you don't have it, you can still do it with the old ChatGPT and the free version and everything. But basically, tell it you're preparing for IELTS. It will start shooting out the questions that are on IELTS, right? And it's easier and easier to get versions with spoken versions. So ChatGPT is speaking to you. Doing this only? No, but if you're watching videos of the real thing, if you're practicing in class and hopefully out of class with people, and you're also using Gen AI, then it's really good preparation for the exam. IELTSteaching.com is a great site. And I took these slides. Just it's not that they just do speaking activities. They have all kinds of stuff, but I'm just trying to give new websites for each part of the test that we're talking about. British Council, I can't believe I haven't mentioned them yet. This is maybe the place to start. There's a Teach IELTS, there's teaching resources, tons of stuff. Cambridge and British Council are affiliated, so it's anything British Council is as close to the real thing as you can get. IELTS Liz, strongly recommend her. She has tons and tons and tons of stuff. And if you're worried that you have to pay for this stuff, there is paid content, but you don't need it because there's so much great stuff she has available for free, and everyone else I've shown you has available for free, that I don't think you should never have to pay. The one thing I would pay for, as I said, is that book I showed you at the beginning, and real tests once you've exhausted the free tests that are out there. If you're having trouble finding free tests, you can email me and I'll show you where to find them. If money is an issue for you. So I did it. But I went really fast. I know. We also got started a little late, but I do have to go in a couple of minutes. But I am available no matter how I do an hour of IELTS. It's just going to be a surface experience. But I know I keep saying this, but it's absolutely true. Email me and I'm happy to help you directly. It's no problem at all. And if I know more, who your audience is, who your students are, well, they can be an audience. I can steer you to other materials. And yeah, that brings us to the close of the hour. So, but I do have a few minutes. As I said, I will stay here to answer questions, people who are here live, and get in touch if you're watching the video and you have a question. So before we move to the chat, I'll sign off by saying thanks so much, everybody. Thanks to American TESOL Institute for the opportunity each month to do the webinars. And I love talking about IELTS and other tests, TOEIC, TOEFL. So if it's not just IELTS, other tests that you're preparing students for, you're welcome to ask me about those as well. So take care, everybody. ELTs around the world, peace, respect, salute. Bye-bye.